Okay, so let's talk about classes and the idea of object-oriented programming. So I'll create a project, a new project, so a non-Qt project, a plain C++ application. Let's give it the name student. Let's continue. Okay, let's say done. Okay, so of course we are given this template, this Hello World program that we all know about. So that's not what we want to discuss though. So what I want to discuss is the idea of classes and objects. And so we have built-in types in C++. So I am sure you're familiar with things like int. All right, so int x. We know x is of type int. Okay, and so if we think about it, what can we do with x? Well, we can do something like add 1 to x or add 5 to x. So we could say x is x plus 12 maybe. Okay. We could print x. Okay. So we can do a lot of things with x. We can multiply x. So we can see out x times 2. Okay, or x divided by 2. So because we know x is of type integer, we can do all of these things to x because that's what we can do to integers. And so it turns out that in programming languages, there are times, many times, when we don't have a type to represent an idea. And so what do I mean by an idea? Well, let's say you're creating an application that is supposed to contain students, okay? However, there is no student type. So if I say student, and I'm going to create a student named Jane, okay? And so the compiler will say unknown type name student, right? Of course, if I put string, the compiler will know. But I want to create a student. All right, a student will have a name, an age, an ID, and maybe a major. What is their major? Maybe it's IT or math or biology. But currently, C++ does not know about student. So what are we to do? Well, it turns out that we can create our own types, okay? And so there is not a student type, but we can create a student type. And that's what we want to do with classes and object-oriented programming. So let's begin. Let's tell the compiler that we will be creating a new type. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go up here to student. I'm going to right click and I will say add new. And I will add a new C++ class file, okay? This one. And I will say choose. And of course, I need to give it a name. And so I will call it student. Okay? And then I will continue. All right? And I will add it to our existing project, student. Okay? And so what you will notice is we will have two new files created. Okay, so notice this folder here, this directory called headers. It has a file named student.h, and inside the sources folder, where we already have main, we have a new file called student.cpp. Okay, I want us to focus on student.h. All right, this is our focus. So let me put that away. So good. This is our focus. So we are not concerned about this. Okay, for this discussion, these are we will not be discussing line 1 and 2 on line 11. We care about what's inside, but I will remove what's inside because I want us to do it from scratch. Okay, so how do we go about telling the compiler that we are creating a new type and that it should recognize our type? Well, the first thing we need to do is to use the class keyword. Okay, and so we need to now say what is the name of our new type. And so what I'm going to do for my new type, I will use a capital letter. Okay, so I will say capital S, student. Right? Okay, and notice the compiler puts a semicolon at the end. Right? A semicolon always goes at the end. So what I have to do now, so this is step 1, and so let me make a couple notes here. Right? I will say something like C++ comes with built-in types such as int and double and char. Okay. We can also create our own types. Right? And we create our own types using classes. All right, so we have to create classes. All right, and more importantly, we need to tell the compiler how our type works. All right, and so we have to tell it what can be done with the type. So for example, if it were an int, well, you can add 2 ints. So what can we do with a student type? All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and describe our student type to the compiler. Now, there are 2 parts to a class, and I will say public colon, okay, and then I will say private. Okay, so these are the 2 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So public is where we put all those things. So whenever you see the word public, it means that whatever you put underneath is visible by other parts of your program. Okay, and we'll talk more about the idea of visibility later on. So what we do in the public is here we create constructors. So we create the constructors. Okay. All right. So what is a constructor? Well, a constructor is how we create an instance of the class. Okay, so what we're telling the compiler is, okay, compiler, this is how we will create a student. Okay, all right, so how do we create a student? Well, all we have to do is to say that student, okay, and we will say that the person who creates a student must provide the name of the student. They must provide the student ID, and they must provide the student's major. Okay, and notice I'm going to put a semicolon. Okay, now it's telling me about string, right? But that's okay, because I know I could always come up here and I could say pong include string. Okay, and then of course I could say using namespace std, and we're good again. Good. So this is how I create a student. So this is what we call a constructor, and this is step one. We create a constructor. All right. Now let's look at the private part. Okay, so now let's look at the private, and the private is, as the name suggests, these are private. Nobody else, no outside program should be able to see these things that are private. And so I'm going to create a string, and I'm going to call it student name. I'm going to create another string, and I'm going to call it student ID. I'm going to create a third string, and I'm going to call it student major. Okay, so if you're following, then you'll notice that these match up with the names here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, when somebody creates a student and they give us the name and the ID and the major of the student, I will store those in these three variables. Okay, I'll store them there. I'll store them there. So think of these as just variables that we have always been using in main and in our functions. Okay, good. So this is actually the first part of creating a class. And so I will save this, and okay, it's telling me unexpected. Oh yeah, what is this doing here? Okay, we don't expect this here. Okay, good. So this is our class. Of course, it's not complete to add to this class, but we'll do that as we go. So it's a step-by-step class that you are creating. Okay, so this is step one. I will leave the video here, and then in the next video we will continue building this student class. I'll see you in that video.